Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Stripped by Sia, your podcast for strippers, sex workers, and all the fancy naked people in between. I am your host, Steph Sia. I'm the host of the show. I bring you new episodes every single Sunday, like it is today, on different topics in the sex worker community. So anything from porn stars or any kind of legal battles that we're going through, or if anything's happening, you say with OnlyFans, like we just did that a couple weeks ago. Strippers, any kind of basically anything to do with sex work, I try to cover all of it, and I try to mix it up every now and then. And this week is no exception. God, I can't remember the last time I recorded a podcast. It's been a couple of weeks. But this week is a little bit different, so I thought I'd mix things up a little bit by bringing on a really exciting guest who also has a podcast. Actually, he has two podcasts, and we'll get into a little bit about that later. But he has a podcast called The Angel at the Starlite Motel, which I discovered on, I think it was Reddit, when I was looking for new podcasts to listen to. And I was like, oh, this sounds really interesting. There was a bit of a mention when I was reading the synopsis, a little bit about sex work in terms of stripping and escorting, underage prostitution. There was some mentioning of drugs and also a murder. So that sounds like everything that's kind of right down my alley. I mean, as a person that studied criminology and who's a total true crime nerd, I was like, oh, this sounds really, really cool. And if there's sex work involved in it, I'm really curious to see how this was portrayed. And it's all based on a true story. So if this doesn't sound interesting, I am sorry, but it sounds super interesting to me. So without further ado, I'm going to be bringing on my guest this week, host of The Angel at Starlite Motel and Dating Kind of Sucks, Adam Heath Avitable. Adam, are you there?
I am here. Thank you for having me.
You are so welcome. I'm so really, really happy to have you on and just kind of shake things up a little bit this week. You have an incredible podcast called The Angel at the Starlite Motel, which we'll get into the details in a little bit. But yeah, other than that, I don't know much about you except for your Twitter bio, which also says that you're a comedian. And I think you're writing a book as well. You do a lot of things. And you're currently on the road right now, too.
Yes. I am what I call a jackass of all trades. I'm a former lawyer who never practiced law. I'm a comedian who's taken a break from comedy after 10 years. I'm a writer, but I also recently I was living in Orlando, and I lost my home after my landlord of 11 years decided to sell it out from under me.
No.
And I chose to sell everything I own, so I'm on the road as a nomad right now while I'm working on my next book.
So
cool. In the meantime, I have two podcasts, Angel at the Starlight Motel, which I haven't done in about 4 months now, and everybody's dying because of it, and I need to get back to it. And Dating Kind of Sucks as well. I'm also a bunch of other things, but that's probably the majority of it, I would say.
Oh my gosh! Wow, so you are a jackass of all trades.
Yes, 100%.
That's so cool. Oh my gosh. And yeah, I mean, as I said in the intro, I kind of found your podcast, I think through a Reddit thread or something I was reading, trying to find some new podcast material to listen to. And then it kind of just caught my eye and caught my attention. And it's, I listened through all of season 1 and I guess all of season 2. I think, is there supposed to be a last episode?
There is. So right as I was getting ready to record the final episode of season 2, I came down with laryngitis.
Oh.
And so I couldn't even try it. And then right after laryngitis, I had 40 days to move out of my house, so I couldn't do any recording. And then I've been on the road, and I just haven't really felt in the space, the mental space to sit down and finish the episode. So I need to do it. It will be done.
Oh my gosh, you are the ultimate cliffhanger.
I know. I feel so bad. I get probably at least once a week from listeners saying, when is the season finale going to come out? So.
Wow. Okay. Well, I mean, for listeners of my podcast, this gives you a ton of time for you to listen in and catch up. But even if you haven't heard of the show, or even if you haven't gotten a chance to take a listen, there's going to be a lot of mentioning in this episode about sex work, how this kind of predatory behavior affects sex workers And also the story of obsession, the story of misogyny, so much stuff and so much problematic behavior. We're going to get into it all.
There really is.
Yeah, which I think we can definitely apply to, our real lives as sex workers. Mm-hmm. So I think this episode, don't skip it. It's still going to be worth a listen. So we're going to have a lot of great discussion today. But, yeah, back to the Angel at Starlite Motel. Yeah, I was really curious about it, and I was skeptical at first. I'll be honest. I was skeptical at first. I was like, oh, there's a lot of buzzy things here. Okay, we've got the true crime-esque aspect of it. It's kind of I would say more of an audio drama. And then you have your aspect of strippers, and we all know that sex sells, and there's a lot of glamorization around strippers and sex workers and stuff. So I was a little bit apprehensive at first. And then it was funny because, I was just listening to it. I think I was just kind of walking around town or something, and I was, half listening to it. And actually, another friend recommended the show to me, too. You should listen to this. And I listened to the first bit, but I was half listening, and I was like, I can't stand this guy. And it was because, the way that the author, the author's voice, basically... And I didn't know at that time that, okay, that's not actually you as the host. Yeah. And then I had to go back and okay, let's start from the beginning and let's actually intently listen to this. And I was like, oh, there's somebody else telling this story. There's someone that wrote a book about this and you are the person that's telling it, narrating it.
Yes. And it's such a complicated, I guess it's not really that complicated of a story, but it's such a bizarre story. And you want me to tell you the origin of the Angel at the Starlite Motel, where it came from originally?
Yes, because there's a bit of a backstory, too, because you have a connection with Mandi May Jackson. Yeah, so please, let us know.
Okay. Well, so there was a club that I have a lot of friends with, a strip club in Orlando called Dancers Royale that I would go to all the time. My best friend was the bartender, and she was the day shift bartender, and so I would spend a lot of time there. Half of the dancers at some point had lived in my house. I rented rooms out, and they needed places to stay, so I'd rent rooms out to them. So I was part of that community. I did all the social media for the club for a while too. So I was very much in fact, I also officiated the weddings of two of the people that worked there. So
no way! Oh wow, I didn't know that.
It's like my family, basically.
Yeah.
And Mandi May Jackson, who is the star of the Angel at the Starlite Motel, was a new dancer there, and she and I just hit it off and invited her out one night to go see Kevin Hart.
Oh,
and
fun.
So yeah, it was a great night. We went to Orlando. We were in Orlando, went and saw Kevin Hart. It was a great show, and then afterwards, she was just kind of I don't want to say that might just be me now. Things that actually happened, but she let's just go hang out. Let's go back to your house and hang out. I wasn't in the mood. It was early. Let's go out. Let's go around downtown. Mm-hmm. And she said, I don't have my ID. I can't. So I was like, okay. Well, I dropped her off and I went out for the night. Never thought about it again. We didn't really. She kind of disappeared from the club for a little while, and I never really thought about it because that's there's a lot of. You see a lot of dancers that come in and leave, and you never, they come in every now and then or whatever.
Totally.
And didn't really hear from her on social media at all, so I just, whatever. And then, several months later, might even been a year later, I was checking, I was like, I haven't heard, maybe my time hop popped up with the picture that we took when we were at Kevin Hart.
Yeah.
I was like, I haven't heard from Mandi in a while, so I Googled her, because I couldn't find her on social media anymore.
Yeah.
And to my surprise, she had been arrested for the murder of her boss at another strip club.
Right, yeah.
And so according to the paper, she had gone out with him and then went back to his place and then unlocked the door or something for her boyfriend who came in, and then there was an altercation. Mm-hmm. The guy got shot in the leg, and then to escape, he jumped off his 6-story balcony and died. And the cops even thought it was suicide at first until they found the bullet hole, and then they realized, and now she and her boyfriend are in jail.
Right.
So...
yeah.
So that's the original story, and that by itself is crazy enough.
Yeah.
And I just oh wow, I can't believe that I had that little weird little tie to Mandi.
Uh-huh.
But then I tweeted about it, and I tweeted about it just this Twitter thread that went a little viral. It got picked up by Mashable and and Cheeseburger, all those sites that like do that.
Yeah.
Board Panda.
Yes.
Yeah. And like George Takei tweeted it, I think, and maybe, but and anyways, and so like 2 weeks after it went viral, I got an email at just one of my email addresses that I have public.
Yeah.
I got an email, and all it had was the link to this website. And so and it had Mandi May Jackson as the subject, and I was like, what is this? So I click on the website, and it is, first of all, one of the creepiest fucking things I've ever seen in my life. Let me just put that away.
Yes,
it
I've
starts
seen
off
it.
with have you seen the site?
I have.
Okay.
It is creepy.
Have you seen the video that starts off with the site? Like,
the text?
He spliced together some movie clips with like, I'll never tell.
Yes.
And it's like got this, so creepy. So then you go in and there's this book, this book that he has written, this 250-page book, this guy, this anonymous person who emailed me, all about his interactions with Mandi May Jackson and all of his basically time from the first time he ever hired her when she was underage or maybe of age, not ever really sure about that, in Miami, and at a hotel, motel in Miami to the current time, and he is convinced that she was framed for the murder. So he has written this book and wants someone to do something about it. And as I read the book, I was like, I have to do something with this. How does this fall in my lap and I don't do anything? So I decided to create this podcast where I will read chapter by chapter and then do commentary with people who knew Mandi and know the industry, like people from the strip club, etc. And do commentary on whether or not how realistic it is, if it's bullshit, etc. And one big aspect of this was my intro is trying to be very clear that I am not writing this book because the stuff he says is completely anathema to my worldview, and I was like, I do not want people thinking that I am saying these things, but I'm just transmitting them to the world, basically.
Yes.
And then it came. And that's where the podcast came from.
And that is how it began. Oh my gosh. Wild in so many levels. Because basically I thought, when I told you, I was like, oh my God, I thought that was you. And I was just so disgusted about what I was hearing. And I was like, this makes me so angry. I don't want to listen to this. And I was like, oh, it's not. I'm like, okay. And then there's commentary at the end and we got to dissect it. So I was like, okay, this is really, really cool. So I thought that was awesome. I really, really, really like that aspect of it.
I'm glad. And it's funny, I've had even friends who listened to it that said sometimes they would get mad at me, not because they actually, they know it's not me who wrote this book, but they would listen to what he was saying and they would just get mad at me because I was the one reading it, and they're just like, Adam, why are you saying these words? And it is hard. I don't know how people who are actors who play villains do it, because then everybody hates you as the character,
Yeah, totally. It literally just made me sick because this guy is seriously fucked in the head, which we'll get into the author, who goes by the name of David, which isn't his real name.
No, it's not. No.
But I guess a question for you, just random. Have you actually read the entire book that's available online, or are you still reading it chapter by chapter, and this is your real reaction kind of thing?
I haven't. I actually wanted to just do it chapter by chapter so that I could take each chapter by itself and do commentary on that without trying to, because I felt if I sat down and read it, then I would forget, is this part already happened yet? Or is this part, did we already talk about this? And so this way, whatever I know is what the audience knows.
Oh, wow. That's really, really, really cool. So everyone listening, try to listen to it. If you can stomach it, it is a lot of heavy stuff.
Yeah.
In there as well, so fair warning there. But yeah, let's get kind of into it too. So I don't know, maybe if you want to talk about the author, David, who is a really interesting character.
He is, and it's funny because I think he puts David into the book at some point, many chapters in, he does it almost like it's an accident, oh, you figured out my name, even though that's not his name. And I have known his name since the beginning, because when I first found out, I did some pretty Googling and was able to find Facebook threads and things like that, where he had deleted his Facebook, people were still referring to him essentially saying that she had been framed for murder and things like that on a now defunct Facebook profile that she had and things like that. So I was like, oh, this is his actual name.
Yeah.
But I didn't know much about him except our emails. And that's the thing, is my first thing, as soon as I got this website and had time to process it, was I emailed, I said, are you the author? And he said, yes. And then I was like, can I do something with this? I don't know what, but do I have your permission to somehow transmit this? And he was like, I was hoping someone might, I want this to get out there because I think that she needs to be out of prison. She should, she should not be in there. So like, and I hate to say this because this sounds like in some way it justifies him in any way. It does not. At the very end, he has some type of noble intentions. Like this book and all the work he's done, and you've seen the website. The website, by the way, I'll just tell people because I used to try to keep it secret, and I realized I don't care. It's seminalscam.com if you want to go check it out for yourself. But be warned, it is a lot.
It's a lot.
Yeah, but I mean, like, he has cell phone tower maps he's plotted out. He has all the stuff he's done. And like, so it's all with this idea that she was framed.
Right.
And so, like, that's at least the ultimate, end. It doesn't justify the means, but it's there.
No.
But he is just, over time I found YouTube videos of him, so now I know more about what he looks like, and, and what he sounds like, which has always been something, in your head you don't really know. And he and I have exchanged dozens, if not 100 or more emails. Yes. And I at some point I need to just share all of the emails, and I'll probably put that on my Patreon at some point so people can just read them. But he goes off on just rants for just like paragraph after paragraph after paragraph about his views on society are very black and white.
Yep.
There's definitely no gray area. I suspect, and I don't want to this also does not mean that it's okay or excuses behavior, but I suspect that he is on the spectrum to a degree because of the way that he reacts and answers questions is very, and he's an engineer as well. So like that kind of all needs to be.
It makes sense.
Maybe his personality. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, he I did a bit of like perusing and like snooping on his website, and I also know his real name, and I also have seen like his YouTube videos and stuff too. Lots of sleuthing, which is kind of fun.
You found them too. Okay, you found like the drone video or whatever.
I didn't watch all of them. There's just a lot of stuff out there.
Yeah.
A lot. But yeah, I was just like, I even, did you see his emails that he published between you and him on his website?
Oh, I haven't been back to the website in a while, but I know that at one point he got mad at me, so he published emails from me.
Yes.
Yeah.
You handled them so gracefully, like.
Yeah.
There's a lot. And the timestamps, oh my god. I was like, oh my gosh, like, Adam hasn't even responded to like the last 10 emails. Like.
Oh, I didn't know. Has he done that recently? I didn't even know that. But yeah, I haven't responded to him in a while. Because I've been busy, and I don't, it's not the priority right now.
No.
But he keeps emailing me.
Yeah. I mean, like, he's very opinionated, and I wanted to bring up the character of David. The character, he is a real person.
Yes.
People, he is a real person. This is not a TV show. He's a real person, but like, I mean, I wanted to kind of highlight that a little bit because a lot of people would kind of share the same perspective, as awful as it sounds. Like his perspective on how he views women, and especially on how he views sex workers, is generally problematic. And I wanted to chat with you about that and see how you felt about that.
I mean, when I first started reading the book, and it was one of those things that I was just like, is this going to be something that's interesting? Like, is this a terribly written book? And then started reading how he viewed just Mandi was at first, like, I was like, this is terrifying, but like, I can't stop reading. It's almost like how his worldview is it's addicting to kind of like, how does somebody survive like this? Like, how does somebody live like this?
Yeah.
And because he contradicts himself consistently. Like,
yes.
At one point, he talks about the fact that he doesn't enjoy sex because he's not a hedonist, because apparently only hedonists enjoy sex. Yes. And then the other time he's talking about how he must, he has to have sex with her. Like, and that's the only point of being with her in the first place. But he doesn't, like, he doesn't. He absolutely loves her and hates her
At the same
simultaneously.
time.
Like he despises her on a cellular level and is at the same time obsessively in love with her, and he has no ability to understand that at all.
No, it's so crazy because, like, I can definitely see, like, the love-hate relationship that he has with her. Like, he hates every aspect of sex work. He hates that she's with, like, black people. Which is another thing.
Racist,
super
of course.
Yeah, of course he would be, though, right?
You're not going to expect him to be enlightened in that area.
No, like, it was just wild. And the whole, like, justification aspect of it, of like him having to have sex with her, or like, oh, I had to have sex with her. I'm like, you had to? You're making yourself feel better? Or
right. Because if he didn't have sex with her, then somehow, like, especially the very first time, he was trying to. First of all, and this I don't think this really spoils anything. It just kind of explains some things. Like, the first time he ever found her was on Backpage.
Yes.
And the reason he went to have sex with her was to prove to some friend of his, who I still don't think is real, that you can find women to have sex without having to fly them in from other countries. I think, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And like that, so he's trying to quote unquote prove a point by going to have sex with an escort in a cheap Miami motel.
Yeah, which is a weird thing to do in general.
And he's so like he hates himself at the same time too, if you think about it. But like, I just one of the favorite lines that he's ever written in it is when, like, the first time they have sex, that he says that her body felt like a bag of tiny bones against his.
Ew, what the fuck?
I know. It's so terrible, but it's like so descriptive in a way that makes you like shiver.
Yeah, it's creepy. Like, I was trying to read the actual, like, excerpts from the book, and I was like, I couldn't get very far. It was very, very hard to swallow. Like, very, as you said, like, very descriptive. I mean, he really likes writing. It shows.
Yes.
But I mean, there was like so many tangents, like, all over the place, and I'm like, things not making sense, and I'm like, what is going on here?
And I've asked him sometimes, I'm like, what happened here? Like, you say something that happens, and I'm like, I want to know more about that, but somehow you skip to this, and he gets mad, and he's just like, well, that's not pertinent to the story, so why would I say that? Or, and his rationale never makes sense to me about why he skips around. But and he's not a good writer, but he has these pearls of just something that are gripping.
Yeah. I don't know what it is about him, but there's something definitely off. And I feel like if there's one person that's like this, there are many people that kind of share the same sentiment.
Absolutely. Here's the funny thing, though. He's not a Trump supporter.
Really? I thought he would be.
No, he like despises Republicans and Trump as well. Like, he is very much anti. Like, he is.
That really surprises me.
He kind of defies stereotypes, which is oddly admirable in that way, I guess. He has his own thought pattern, and he does not subscribe to anyone else's belief system.
No,
for damn sure.
No, I mean, like, it's interesting what he said. He has his own belief system. He has his own rationale for doing things. Like, and you mentioned he's an engineer, so, like, I mean, my partner is an engineer too, so they tend to do things in like a certain way.
Yes.
A very like linear way. So one thing that I thought was interesting too, I think it was in season 2 of the show, was how he would go to strip clubs and he would go there to find the prettiest dancers or something like that.
Yeah, his goal was to find, and I'm assuming try to sleep with the hottest dancer at every club, and so he developed this elaborate system to do so.
Yeah, a system. Right. That's a good way of putting it. And I thought that was really bizarre, creepy, and stalky, and obsessive, and predatory, and like so many words that I'm just like, oh, why?
Yes.
Yeah, like.
Yes. and anybody who's danced knows these guys, knows these ones who come in and like think that they think that because you're a dancer that it automatically means that you are providing full service services after work,
Right.
that it's just by default, and they don't understand how you could do anything else. Like, well, that's just like a given to them.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's like that's like a perspective that a lot of people not in sex work unfortunately carry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just like, oh, you're a stripper, so that means you always have sex with your customers. And
Right.
I'm a stripper, and I'm like, no. No.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like I said, I know they're all. I have so many friends that are, and absolutely not. And I known a couple who have like who
Done
will
extras, yeah.
sleep with people for money, of course. I mean that. But I know a couple people who are teachers who would sleep with someone for money too. That doesn't it doesn't really mean anything that if they're a dancer or not.
No, but he has this thing in his mind, like, he would think that it's like maybe more, say, accessible in a certain way. Like, I don't know.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's essentially just a given, and especially when they're slightly older, which I think to him meant like over 30.
Yeah.
He called that older.
Yes.
And then he does not describe anyone who's older by any type of flattering terms either.
No. And I'm like, I'm 31 and a dancer. You wouldn't approve of me.
Right.
Yeah. So I mean, like, it's just odd how he behaves. But again, like, there is always that person in the club that is always going to try to want to get further with you. This happens to so many dancers. It's happened to me when I was last booked at the club, and there was a lot last time. There was a lot of requests last time, and I'm like, sorry, no, I guess, like, with the pandemic and everything. I mean, well, Florida, everything's been open over there, but here where I'm based in Canada, things have been shut down for a while, so, like, open and closed and stuff like that. But I guess people are just hungry or desperate. Yeah, lonely. Yeah, for sure. But
in Canada, full service sex work is decriminalized.
It's the Nordic model up here. So, portions of it are criminalized and some parts are not, which makes it also not good as well. So it's not
I
a
had
great
someone
system.
from Ontario on Dating Kinda Sucks.
Oh, did you?
Who was a full service sex worker, and we just talked about all that, and she did it out of her house and all that stuff, and it was really interesting and very enlightening.
Oh, cool. I'll have to listen to that episode. I'll have to DM you after.
Yeah.
I mean, the laws here are a little bit different, but, like, there's certain things that you can't do. Like, you can't live on, like, some certain parts are, I wouldn't say decriminalized, but, like, basically, like, you can't live off the means of, they call it prostitution. You can't advertise, you can't do certain things, but then it's just like, well, how do you live as a human being if you can't benefit? Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, it's a lot of gray area, and the language that they use in our legislation is super, super complicated. And I've had professors come on to the show as well. If you want to listen to parts of season 2, there's Dr. Tulia Law that speaks about that. I also had Dr. Tamara O'Doherty. And if for anyone else listening too, those are great episodes who are obviously much more well-versed in that language. Even though I study criminology, it still like goes over my head with the wording. And I think they make the language, like, very confusing on purpose, so people won't question it, but that's another topic.
They interpret it however they want as well, basically.
Yes, and that too, which, I mean, they're super archaic laws. They were put in by the the conservative government, which is almost the equivalent of the Republicans down in the States. So, I mean, if you can imagine, it's on a similar vein, and that hasn't...
I have heard that, yeah.
Yes, and that hasn't changed in like 7-8 years now, so... But anyways, side tangent, my apologies. I mean, we always do tangents on this podcast, but they're still related. But I also want to bring the topic and steer the topic back to, I guess, towards Mandi and the relationship that he had with her, and I'm using the term relationship on like a loose term because obviously he had seen her quite a bunch of times. Like I would say that he'd probably be one of her regulars over the years. And that obsessiveness that came with it and that also comes through on the podcast, in his book, on the website. Yeah. Did you want to chat a little bit about that and speak a little bit about that?
I think that's one of the, I think that's probably common, and I'm sure that anybody that has regulars can probably attest to that, is there becomes a level of familiarity with it. And he has, once again, it's a self-contradictory thing, he has at the same time an awareness that what she does, and what she does for a living, at the same time that he's calling it disgusting. Like he really likes to judge her for how she brings in money, while he is also giving her money for the same thing. And he has convinced himself that he is different, that he is special. He's not a customer, that he's more than that. And he does little tests, with money, where he'll give her a gas card or he won't reply and things like that. And and she still will never call him her boyfriend, even though he has wanted her to.
No.
And he just desperately wanted a relationship with her, even though we know that any relationship that he had would never last, because he talks about how as soon as someone did anything that bothered him, he'd like throw their shit out on the front yard.
Literally, he did that. So yeah.
Not only did he do that, but she had her furniture at his place.
Yep.
And he was so mad at her that he took I think it was a hutch or something that her grandfather left her.
Yes, yeah, I remember that. And left it in the street.
And brought it out on the curb, and then went out with an axe and smashed it to pieces.
Yeah.
And then later on felt bad and brought all the pieces to her father in case they wanted to put it back together.
That's so fucked.
Psychotic.
Yeah. Like you can't make this shit up.
No, right? And he's the one telling this. He's like, yeah, this is what I did. And he has no guilt about it, and no remorse whatsoever, but also no acknowledgement that it's even the slightest bit unhinged to do so.
No. Like, does this guy not have any boundaries or any kind of like, okay, like a red flag is going up here, like maybe I shouldn't do that. Like there's no inkling in his body, I don't think, that is like, maybe this isn't okay.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. He just acts as purely as impulse and has no ability to process his thoughts until afterwards. And it's terrifying. Although he does have the forethought to record sometimes. Like he'll set up a camera to record before he does things, or when he thinks something's going to happen. There's a bunch of weird videos of him like arguing with the cops when she called the cops and things like that too.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, like how he's so entangled with her family too, which I thought was really intrusive.
Yeah.
Holy crap. Like,
I mean, it's just like the fact that he like in any way like is tied to her family. Like I really wish I could ask her father. I'm gonna guess her father is a piece of shit. I'm just gonna take a stereotypical guess and gonna just suppose that her family's probably not the best.
No, not the best environment to be raised in.
And anyway, but what does the dad have? Well, I wonder what her dad thinks when he sees this guy who's his age basically wandering it and to talk about Mandi.
Yeah.
It has to be odd.
I don't want to imagine that kind of conversation, but I'm also curious too. It's just so wild to me. I'm shuddering right now.
I know. It's so hard to describe this podcast to people when I try to describe it to them, and then I'm just like, if you just listen, you'll understand. But it really is hard to tell people what it's about, because it's something that I would love eventually to finish it and have Netflix decide to turn it into a Tiger King type of show, because I think it needs that. I really feel like it needs some type of faux documentary thing.
Oh, absolutely. I think, it has the potential for that for sure. Absolutely. I also want to chat a little bit too, because it is basically a book that you are reading and you're reading excerpts of it. Obviously, language is a huge thing on how he refers to sex workers, and yes. I really liked your commentary, actually, yours and Lisa's and Marcella. I thought was great too. How you would kind of correct the the language there and refer to us as sex workers, which I thought was great because the language that David, the author, used are often more derogatory, like terms that we kind of like no longer use unless we're kind of using in jest. Unless you are, I know some people may use these terms to describe themselves, but like the terms like hookers and prostitutes, and he refers to strippers as like skanks and stuff.
Oh yeah.
Let's chat.
Yeah, but and it is funny. Well, and also, anyone who listens, Lisa is she's was my commentator for the first season and a half, and then she got busy with work, so I had Marcella come in. But Lisa was the bartender at day shift at Dancers, and so she doesn't give any fucks about proper language. So she like we get into it because she's like, I just like the word hooker. It just sounds better. And I was like, well, I agree. Like phonetically, like it's got a nice ring.
It's got a ring to it. Yeah.
Yeah, but let's try to avoid using it. The one that I still wrestle with is prostitute and prostitution, just because, and I think maybe it's the lawyer in me, because like legally that's the term, and like that word has such a like it actually is a specific word, whereas sex worker can be such a broad thing that covers so many. You know, I mean, I have an OnlyFans. I'm a sex worker as well, and like I think that like it's versus prostitution when you're the full service escort, and so full service sex worker. So there's a lot of terminology, but I at the very least wanted to at least be like, let's think about the language we're using. These are I try to my goal in life right now is I try to be very very vocal as an ally, and so that's one aspect as well, is that sex work is work. People who do sex work are normal people who deserve respect and consideration and everything you would give to any other human being, and so that's the important takeaway from that.
100%, because like I remember reading again when I was attempting to read like bits and pieces of the actual book that's available online. I remember, and I'll read it from here too, but again, in David's words, not your words, the author's words. But he said something about, but the general irrationality of strippers has long been a curiosity to me. I would say there is a reason they become strippers. Their minds are not functional. You are stuck on your own experience. The strippers are normal girls who are really independent-minded and not inhibited and choose to strip. You have an agenda to normalize sex work. That has nothing to do with who Mandi Jackson is. I think that was an email to you. Or some kind of response. Yeah,
I think I called him out on that, and I was like, that not every, like, I was trying to educate him.
Yeah.
It did not work.
No, you tried. It was admirable, though. It was A for effort, but
Well, and that's the contradictory thing too. So at the same time, he says that that like escorts that or whatever are women that don't have fully developed minds. That strippers are women who are independent and strong-willed, who have made their own destiny. But people who have sex for money are not. But at the same time, he thinks that anybody who's a stripper is willing to have sex for money. So like he contradicts himself with that and try to draw this weird distinction between what Mandi was and what a stripper is in his eyes.
Yeah.
And then at the same time too, he says that that like he obsesses over this fact that Mandi has a brain disorder.
Oh yeah,
from getting into a go-kart accident when she was a young early teen adolescent, and that she's eventually going to have some weird awakening when she hits like 27, 28, and does not see the problem that if this is someone that has the brain of a child, according to him, why are you constantly having sex with her?
Right.
How can you justify? How can you feel at all okay with that?
It's gross. Yeah,
it's crazy.
It's super manipulative. It's exploitive. It's misogynistic. It's everything that's kind of disgusting, and like reasons why I hate certain men and why all of that. And it's, as you said, like super contradictory behavior, and it's really interesting because he's also strangely like protective over her, and I think that's where like the loving aspect comes from. And this kind of goes into like the whole like the savior complex bit of like a lot of clients will try to quote unquote save girls from the club or save their providers or try to get them to stop.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
It's interesting because over the years I would say that I've really tried to grow as a person, and I think that I am not someone who I liked 10 years ago. Like who I like. I mean, I am someone I like now, but back then I wouldn't have liked who I was, and I was actually just as bad in that sense.
Oh.
And so I can actually really I can really explain it because I was like that. When I first started going to like strip clubs and stuff, I felt this need. My friends called me Captain Save-A-Ho, like that was the thing, because I would find someone and try to rescue them from their own life that they had chosen, and not with any, here, let me like empower you, let me be a support system for you, but let me bring you away from all this so you never have to do it again, regardless if it's something you enjoy doing or you want to do, etc. And it took me a while to realize how that was also the same person who I would put women on pedestals and not understand that that's just as misogynistic as tearing women down. Like that's just as bad. It took me a long time to realize how to be an actual ally and not someone who was just essentially doing it for my own ego. The savior thing is a huge issue, and I know so many dancers who had who started dating somebody they met at the club, and then the person was, oh, I don't want you working there anymore. Now that's not really, I guess that's not really actually the savior thing. That's just guys who are like complete idiots and toxic and insecure and jealous and can't handle her. But this idea of rescuing is it's the viewpoint is that you're trapped in this, that you wouldn't be doing this if you could do something else, and it's very demeaning to have that to think that way.
Yeah, 100%, because like who are you to make that assumption? Right. Yeah.
And it is something that we I think men are kind of trained that that we're trained or told by society that women are weaker, which anyone who actually knows women knows how untrue that is. Like, if we're to look, I mean, women are, they can handle more endurance. They're emotionally stronger,
Yes.
Men are the most emotionally weak people out there, like, you think about men throw temper tantrums as soon as anybody says no to them. I mean, can you imagine if women did that? Yeah, it's ridiculous. But we're trained to think this, and then so then we see someone who is usually, especially as like a dancer or something, someone who is tiny, because most dancers are obviously going to be that petite size, and it brings out this, oh, they must be weak, they need us to save them, they need us to swoop in and and just carry them away where they never have to worry about a thing in their pretty little head, and it's so toxic.
It's super toxic, and like, I mean, I haven't had experience with that. Like, I have had a boyfriend that like said they were okay with it before, and I was like, hey, I'm laying everything on the line for you. I do this and that. And then of course, as we got further into the relationship, he was like, actually, I'm not okay with it. I'm like, of course, right? Of course. Right. But no, you had it provided a really, really great explanation of what this like savior complex is, because unfortunately that does happen a lot. I'm not trying to discount those situations where people are forced into this type of work, like exploitation and trafficking. I'm not talking about that at all, because it does happen. But like, talking about this like on my show, it is all about like people who are consenting to be in this type of work. That's what sex work is, right? So that's really interesting. And really interesting too that you brought up like your own personal aspect about how you were kind of like toxic, like like a misogynist before, because like I remember reading something on the internet about you, and I was like, should I bring him on? Like, if people find this, will people be mad at me? But I'm glad. I mean, that was a long time ago, so I'm really, really glad that you were able to own up to that, and as you say, are a reformed misogynist. Like,
But it is, several years ago, I actually, when the whole Me Too movement came about, I wrote a whole post. I used to have a really big audience in the blog world, and I wrote a whole blog post about here's all the shit that I've done. Like, we've all done stuff we're not proud of. It's all about trying to grow. Here's a list of all the things that I've done in my life that I'm not proud of. And, from, just like most of it was pretty minor things too. Like I had an affair when I was married, and it was my employee, which is not minor in like my personal life, but as far as, like other things goes, it's not this, it was two consenting adults, etc. But there was a power dynamic and etc. that was changed from that. And so I wrote about this, and it blew up in a bad way. Like I think it was the wrong time type maybe to come up with something that was like
so
literally painting a target on myself. But it also gave me a lot of time to think and be like, have I just been performative in my actions, or have I actually been productive? Have I been doing?
Yes.
Am I believing what I do? Am I doing what I believe, etc.? And that helped too. That helped me like even take it a step further, because I was happy with myself when I wrote that post, and I'm still stand by every word that I wrote in that.
Totally.
But at the same time, I wanted to like let me continue to grow. Let me try to listen more and talk less. And that's been kind of my mantra since that period, is I need to continue to listen. And because I can be very presumptuous, and I can be very authoritative I think it's just my voice, my stature. I'm used to everybody following me. I'm used to everybody coming up to me for advice. It's always been who I am in my life, and I sometimes get into my own head with that, and I need to learn to step back. And that was a lot of it. Like I made amends to anybody that I ever mistreated, but I also realized that even if some of the things I did were minor, like savior syndrome, like trying to find a dancer and be like, let me take you away from all of this. In the long run, I had good intentions. It just I was never toxic about it, but it was never healthy, and it was never a good idea. And I did not have the respect for them that they deserved at that time. And now going back, it's nice to be able to look back and say, okay, that was shitty behavior, and now I can easily maybe point that out in other men and be like, no, that's bad. It might seem like a minor red flag, but no, that's going to lead to something worse later on if you don't stop it now.
Yeah, totally. That's really great. And like, I'd love to hear, I mean, maybe we could just quickly go into like, how can you be a better ally as like a cis white male? Because that's a lot of questions. There are a lot of cis white males and like a lot of civilians and non-sex workers that listen to the show as well. So that's always like a big question. So how would you, like, what kind of advice would you give?
This is going to be really funny, but like it might sound funny, but I would say that the first thing that any cis white male can do, learn how to wash your own ass. And I really mean that, because I feel like there's like this unwashed ass syndrome, and what that usually leads to are toxic men and toxic masculinity, because the problem, I think, is not necessarily cis white men, it's cis straight white men who are like violently straight. Like that is their identity, being straight. And they are so terrified of whatever thoughts might be in their head. They're refusing to ever accept the fact that sexuality is actually a spectrum. And it's a bunch of shades of gray. It's not black and white. Very few people are 100% straight or 100% gay. There's usually some flexibility. And I think that if men can learn, like, and so that first step is literally learning to wash your ass, learning that you have an ass. Don't be afraid to play with your ass, because that leads you to like, oh, look, you didn't turn gay when you touched your ass. Imagine that. Like that's really is like a fear that so many of these men have.
Totally, I see that.
and if they could just embrace their sexuality and start to realize that there's shades of gray, I feel like they can become better allies, because then they start to learn a little bit of empathy. Because like I'm pan. I guess I'm pansexual. And coming out publicly as pan and being able to, ally, not just be an ally with my queer friends, but to say, I also have, I'm queer too, gave me that ability to really, I think, it didn't give me that ability, but it allowed me to tap into empathy a little bit better, because I can see the judgment that you can get from these straight white men.
Yes. Oh yeah, that's a great one. I've never heard of that kind of aspect before. So thank you for bringing that on to the show for our listeners, because then I welcome all different perspectives, and it's just so refreshing and enlightening to hear something else. So thank you for that little bit.
The incels on TikTok get so mad at me because one of the things that I'll do is usually say for men, like when I give tips for men, I'm usually like, and remember that everybody is a little bit gay, and they go batshit insane over that idea. It's just they cannot handle it because most of them have had some type of thought in their mind and that they've buried down because they're so afraid of it. Yeah. And I think that if you stop being afraid of it, you stop being so toxic because that manifests itself as toxic behavior.
Totally. Oh my God. And like incels are another topic. Oh my God. Yeah. Do not want to get into that today, but I mean, do you tackle topics like this on your Dating Kind of Sucks podcast as well? Or like, tell us a little bit about that.
We do for a little bit. It's evolved more into that over time. It started off just as two people talking about dating and just like sharing our own crazy stories with extreme transparency with no boundaries, and then doing a takeaway. And then, however, I started becoming very vocal on TikTok and standing up and trying to really support women and be not anti-man but anti-toxic, masculinity, anti-misogyny, anti-patriarchy. And I've seen that now I've started to try to bring more of that into the podcast because I think that's what we need to really stand out.
Yeah, that's super progressive in nature. So I'm really, really glad I'll have to listen to more of those episodes, add that to my podcast playlist. So... But we'll be sure to plug those links at the end of the show, and they're going to be in the show notes if you haven't checked out already. But I think now is probably a good time to move over into a few of the Q&A that came in from, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and stuff. So we'll just get into it. So a popular question, and we kind of addressed it earlier, but I'd love to know if he's going to finish or if that's all. I know he had some health issues earlier in the year.
Yes, I will absolutely be finishing at least season 2. Now, there are 2 more sections of the book. I want to assess if they're too technical because I know he starts getting into the court stuff and the court transcripts and everything, and I don't really have any interest to read a bunch of like just boring court transcripts or procedural things.
Dry.
So I may adjust the formats for season 3 and 4 depending on how the book is laid out once I get to that point. But I will finish season 2. Ideally, I'm saying, what is this? This is September. Mm-hmm. By the end of September, I hope to be, have it done.
Yay. Well, your laryngitis sounds like it's gone and your voice sounds lovely. So I'm also looking forward to that.
Oh, good. We've already recorded the commentary. That's the funny thing is Marcel and I already recorded the commentary. So all that I have to do is just do the reading. But it's a long chapter, and the reading is actually the exhausting part because I try to read it with, a little bit of flourishes and drama and everything.
Oh, it's good. I'm just like, wow, you got a total like movie voice. I'm like, I can't stop listening even though like even the content is horrible. Like
Right.
And I would say like Marcella is awesome. I love Marcella, so I'm so glad you brought her on.
Yes, she's great.
She is great. It sounds like Adam went on a date with Mandi whilst this guy was around. Did she ever talk about him? Was he aware of him when they dated?
That is a great question. And when I started first reading the book, I actually tried to find, because he writes everything kind of chronologically, the time that Mandi and I went out to see if he mentioned it or brought it up at all in any way to see if like she had talked about us going out at all. And because I would go into the club and she and I would sit there and chat for a while, and I'm not the type to buy dances if they're not someone I know. Like I'll do that to support somebody, but I don't usually go in there I don't want to waste the dancer's time. I'd let them go make money from people who are going to pay them lots of money, So
totally.
She'd usually come and just chat with me for a while when no one was in there, and then I was like, go make your money, go dance with people. So we talked for a bit, and she never brought him up in any way whatsoever. Like I had no idea this guy existed.
Yeah.
And and apparently he had no idea I existed either.
Yeah, but like at the same time, like. If I had clients, I probably personally would never bring up other clients when I'm with other people. Like that, yeah. Like for me personally, like I just feel like that would never ever happen. That just seems like a no-go area.
Well, it would be, except that when she and I would chat, she'd be like, "Oh yeah, that person, blah blah blah." Like she would tell me about her regulars and what they
Oh
were,
yeah.
if people were weird or whatever and stuff like that. Because I think it that way because I wasn't really a customer, I wasn't really an employee. I was kind of in this weird gray area, so
Yeah.
I was somebody that was like okay to talk to about these things without it feeling bizarre.
Yeah, that's true. You are in that kind of like interesting. I don't even know what to classify you as, like a friend. Like I don't know.
And that's the thing. Like, I got invited to all the, customer, all the employee parties. I was there for, like I said, a lot of the, I had dancers living with me all the time as well. So I was just kind of like, people just assumed that I worked for the club in some capacity a lot of times.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, like, yeah, that I would understand because I would, like, I'd be complaining to the DJ or like complaining to like the bartender.
Exactly. Yeah.
Same kind of thing. So okay, cool, cool. What was it like being bombarded with emails from David?
I mean, they're always interesting. I usually forward them to Lisa and Marcella to read as when they're really intriguing. And sometimes I try to reply. Sometimes I just don't have the emotional energy because he can be a bit much. I can't, and it makes me realize that I can't imagine what he's like in person. Like I feel like he's either probably robotic or like just a fire hose. Like probably one or the other, and there's probably no in between.
No, it's one or the other. He's like, as you said, he's like super, super like black and white. So
Yeah, it's someday I hope to meet him. Like I really I wanted to meet him, like just be like, let's meet up for a drink at some point, But then I ended up leaving Florida. Maybe when I go back, when I'm going to be visiting again in the spring, I'll try to set up something.
yeah, that was the next question for me actually. I was like, have you ever met him? No, not yet.
And I'm trying to set up visitation with Mandi too at in Ocala, the Ocala Women's Prison, because I would love to. In my dream originally, like finish this podcast, and then the final episode would be me sitting down, however long it needed to be, with me sitting down with her recording and us just talking, and that would be like the finale.
That would be awesome. And that was the next person's question. It's like, when are you going to bring Mandi onto the show? So I guess we'll.
Yeah. She's I've messaged her a couple times and she's not great at messaging back, but we've emailed back and forth a few times. She is I think a little she somehow thinks it's going to get her in more trouble.
I see.
But I think, and this is I feel guilty even saying this, I think if I offered her money, she'd be fine with it.
Yeah, I mean,
and I feel bad saying that, but I'm like, if I'm like, hey, listen, I'll put $100 or $200 in your commissary if you may put me on your list to come in and talk to you, then I think she will.
No, and I know where you're coming from. You're not saying that from I know it sounds really bad, but like, if you've listened to the show, you might understand. Okay, well, she's motivated by money.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. But yeah, like I think you might be right in that aspect. So that would be a really, really cool episode. I would love to hear that. Like I would love to hear things from her perspective.
It would be interesting. I think people would be surprised to hear like just her. I mean, it'd be nice to hear her voice and like because all we hear is David's voice of her.
Yeah.
And my recollection of her and Lisa's recollection of her, but we don't actually get to hear her. And I think that would be good.
It would be so good to have to give her voice, right? Because like I feel like everyone else is speaking for her, but
right.
Yeah, like what was she like back then? I'm sure she's just like completely normal.
Yeah, she was just she was nice. She was she was nice and she was a little shady, like basically. Like it was just like everything she said. You always like I don't know if I believe you 100%, but she was just. But she's also very enjoys like he actually does talk about in the book like her dogs and like she likes the things that girls in their early 20s like like the same like that she's no different than any of that
Totally.
She took pleasure in small things and was genuinely like a nice person just to hang out with and chat with because she could just talk about anything.
Totally. And that's like a skill that so many of us sex workers and strippers, like that's definitely part of our job. Like we have to have great customer service skills. We have to have like great interpersonal skills too. Like we're all just pretty kind of normal.
Yeah, basically a psychologist, is what you are.
Yes, and that too, right? Because you got to like deal with everyone's problems that they try to dump on you.
Be a good listener sometimes. Just sit there and just let people share, and then they feel a connection with you as well. It's like psychology and sales put together, which is two very important skills in life.
So many great skills that you learn from stripping in all aspects of sex work, but. Yeah, I mean, there are episodes dedicated to that, so y'all can listen to those episodes back.
Absolutely. I know I will.
Perfect. And I guess, like, the last question here is, do you think that Mandi May Jackson is guilty or innocent?
Right now, I haven't read all this evidence that David's collected and everything like that.
There's a lot of evidence.
I think, I don't think she ever had any intention of robbing him. I think that she makes terrible decisions when it comes to the men in her life.
Yeah.
And that her choice to date Scott Love, who, from everything that I've heard, is an absolute garbage human being.
Yeah,
and,
he sounds horrible.
I think he saw an opportunity and went to take advantage of it, and she was either caught in the crossfire, like in the sense that she was just there, or from what I've also been hearing from what David's been emailing me, she wasn't even actually there when it happened. Like they sent her downstairs to do something, or she did like coke or something that like knocked her out, like she was just like kind of zoned out and doesn't remember anything. And so I do not think that Mandi May Jackson has a malicious bone in her body, though.
No.
And so maybe, she could have done some time for being involved in this, but 2 life sentences for murder is absolutely a ridiculous sentence, and I think that's not fair. That's not equitable. That's not at all appropriate.
No, absolutely not. And yeah, I mean, I read some things too about where, like, how David was kind of portraying and describing the scene of, like, when it happened. I don't want to spoil anything for anybody, but yeah, like, I want to say that she's innocent. So, yeah. I don't think she should be doing, like, that much time for...
No, I mean, I could see, like, somehow, because they found they found credit cards or whatever with her and things like that, like, which I don't think spoils anything that we talked about in the beginning early, but like, things like that, and so, like, yes, she had ties to it, but even as nice as she was, she's also she's not the smartest person in the world either, and she has a desperate need for men to like her. That is something that I will say, and so I can see her going along with whatever she thinks her boyfriend tells her to do, because she wants him to be happy.
Of course, yeah, like she's loyal to, like, a flaw, and I would say, like, yeah, that's definitely, like, one of her character flaws, I would say, is just maybe being involved with some wrong people and being, especially Scott Love, from what I've read, sounds like, as you said, a total trash fire, garbage human being. So, yeah, I mean, it's terrible what's happened to her, and, like, I feel like she should have gone in Canada, she would have maybe gone manslaughter, or, like, being charged with, like, aiding and abetting, but not full life sentence. 2 full life sentences.
Right, 2 life sentences. Yeah, when we get into the trial, I think it'll be we'll be able to really see like, if they screwed up, because it's my understanding, just from the basic that whatever skimming I've done, is that they did screw up. Like, the way that they defended her was completely inappropriate, and the prosecutors something weird about how not allowing to prosecute both people at once, even though they were doing the same crime and everything. It sounds like an absolute kangaroo circus as far as the courthouse was concerned.
Yeah, so we'll get into that. We'll see what happens in seasons 3 and 4, and also season 2 finale. So y'all will have to listen in. You guys will have some time if you're interested in the show. It's called The Angel at the Starlite Motel, as well as Adam's other podcast called Dating Kind of Sucks. But yeah, Adam, it's time for you to also market the shit out of everything that you're doing right now. Go ahead. Where can we find you?
You can find all of my content at Avitable.com, and Avitable is really easy. It's just AVI, Alpha Victor Indigo, and the word table. It's really not that hard. I'm Adam Avitable on TikTok, which is kind of one of my primary social media networks right now.
Awesome.
And that I do a lot of work. And we have Dating Kinda Sucks available everywhere, also on YouTube, and of course Angel the Starlite Motel. And I think that's probably all I really have to promote. Is you can find me on any of those things. I'm a photographer. I have photography on Instagram. Whatever. You can track down all of my social media. I don't care. I'm always like meeting new people because I'm a guy, and my male privilege means that I can just welcome anybody in my life without fear of them being creepy.
That's so true, unfortunately, but yes.
Yeah. I'm fully aware of that, and I embrace that, and I feel bad that society is as shitty as it is.
Yeah, society is fucking shitty. Oh my gosh. But Adam, it was such a blast having you on. Thank you so much for chatting with me today. It was so great, and I hope everyone takes a listen of both Adam's podcasts there. We've now said it a few times, the Angel at Starlite Motel, and also Dating Kinda Sucks. And for us listeners here at Strip by Sia, it's new episodes every single Sunday at midnight. That's Pacific Standard Time. And you can find me on Instagram or Twitter. It's Strip by Sia, or my personal on Instagram, which is Sia Stuff. And that's pretty much it for this week. Stay tuned for another episode next week. Thanks again, Adam.
Thank you. This has been a blast.
Thank you. Bye. You're listening to Strip by Sia, hosted, produced, and edited by Steph Sia, artwork by Maria Bellandarama, music by Ted D, and photography by Ian Davern.